Lee Richardson, Wycomico County Farm Bureau, poultry farmer, grain farmer. I had it all written down tonight, but some people have, touched on some things, Mr. Lembeck. And I guess the first thing is, I apologize to all the people that have showed up tonight and weren't told to wear their boots. But it's getting pretty deep. Because I really think, I'm usually a level-headed person. And most people know me in here, and I don't usually get hot-headed. That's why I wrote it down tonight, because of these regulations. But it's getting old. We don't give time for science to work. Of all the regulations that get shoved down our throat, every other state around this bay can make it work, but Maryland. But all you all can do is pass it off to EPA. Oh, they're telling us what to do. Well, it's time for Maryland to stand up. I'm tired of it. I think everybody's tired of it. I understand, I really think this is 95% political. It's 5% common sense driven. We have a phosphorus problem, and I believe that too. But we've been making headway for several years. But instead of giving current nutrient management regulations a chance to work, MDA insists on giving us more. As I understand it, the research told the governor that it was stupid for farmers to apply any phosphorus to high phosphorus soils. It should be stopped at all costs. There's where our answer was for EPA. If we all should think like that, then isn't it stupid for municipalities to put any phosphorus in our waterways? Also, wouldn't it be stupid for us to allow people to move to Maryland because they would be adding phosphorus to our Maryland ecosystem? If environmentalists and the current governor really want to reduce pollution and save the bay, then they should create and push legislation that prevents population growth in the Chesapeake Bay region. After all, population growth is the real problem. I guess the problem there is that many may cost too many votes for someone's political career. Instead, once again, farmers are chosen ones to bear the load of cleaning up the Chesapeake Bay. So I think instead of giving us all these empty promises, maybe you could create a new tax to go along with these new regulations. We call it Save the Bay tax. You tell us these regulations are what people want, so let them foot the bill. The state can make the tax high enough to pay for the manure transport to help the poultry farmers, plus pay grain farmers the difference in cost of using commercial fertilizer instead of manure sludge. You wouldn't need an economic thing then, because you're going to pay for it with a tax. But no, you say, well, I didn't really think you would, because that wouldn't be a good political career move. This brings me to a final thought. Well, wait. This is to the Mr. Secretary. I think a political move would be for you to toughen up and do what's best for Maryland and stand up to the governor. This is bad legislation, all in all. At least then you can sleep at night knowing you did what was right for agriculture and not someone's political career. It's time MDA starts protecting Maryland agriculture again before it's too late. Now, the two questions I have. You had a stakeholders meeting, and I know for a fact that an important stakeholder was eliminated or not allowed to it, and that was Ray Ellis, because he's a major manure transporter. Now he's got numbers and a lot of facts, so please explain to me why he would have been eliminated from that meeting.
We had a meeting that represented the key agricultural organizations and environmental interests. Mr. Ellis separately, and actually prior to that, requested a meeting with the department that we had. We held a meeting that Mr. Ellis invited a number of representatives from the agriculture industry, the poultry industry, consultants, brokers to the department, and laid out these issues. So that was information that was available to the department for the process. So I would suggest that Mr. Ellis's input was provided and is included in the decisions we've been making.
Okay, can you clarify that at this stakeholders meeting, pretty much MDA showed up and said, here's what we'll give you, and I heard no input from DPI or Farm Bureau. They more or less brought it back to their people, but really had no input. Is that true?
They were at the table representing their respective organizations and positions. So our objective was to develop a proposal, a consensus agreement that people were comfortable moving forward with, and that's what came out of that discussion.
And all these stakeholders had a consensus agreement to these new regulations.
I think it would be better for them to speak for themselves rather than me for speak for them, but generally we had a consensus agreement coming out of the second meeting.
Well, I find it hard to believe that we can take numbers out of the air for our EPA to follow, that they call to do their TMDLs. You know, these numbers are, you know, kind of guessed up, you know, and to the best of their knowledge. But we're going to go ahead and move it along with a regulation that we can get numbers for economics and keep moving on. It makes no sense to me.
Thank you, Lee. Who's next? I've got Charles Wright up front.
I'm Charles Wright. I'm about like Lee, I'm about pissed off. I went through 22 years of soil samples, getting ready for this mess. And I took 300 acres that represent 10 fields. And I started with them right before we started using manure. I've had control of those fields. They've had manure applied to them according to the crop rotation, nutrient management plan, and whatever regulation I had to follow. When we started, those fields, the average was for phosphorus was 90. Like I said, they had not been applied manure before. The highest year was 2009, when we took soil sample after 2008. That was 192. You're thinking, I told you that manure is causing high phosphorus. But 2008 was not a stellar crop for us. By 2012, those same 300 acres are all irrigated. Our FIV is down to 140 from 192. I believe that one year was inflated as it made that go up. My main point is we've been applying manure and bringing down phosphorus levels with substantial increases in corn yields and with irrigation. I don't see any of that research being done by University of Maryland. It's like Eddie was saying earlier, we're more site specific. We're putting it on with GPS. We're using spinner spreaders. We're calculating it down because it currently has a value. We also took a farm out of CREP this year. It's been in it for 10 years. Never had manure applied previously. Did a soil sample on it, 122. Apparently that's not doing much. I'm using manure, using irrigation, with the genetics in the seed that are now the ability for farmers in this room with irrigation to approach that 300 bushel mark. We need to hold off on this. There's technology there that we can use phosphorus, and we can use the manure here and not ship it all over Hell's Half Acre in this state. Where's big environment tonight? Where are the big extreme environment? They should be in here standing on their heads because we're going to burn up every dinosaur hauling this manure clean all over the state. Do they agree with that? Do they think that's a good idea? That's a question.
I don't think I'm prepared to answer that question, Charles.
All right, that's an honest answer. Let's see. I about lost my train. I got a note on the front. I've got a question. Lady up front has some excellent points because she's a no land plan. And you're promising that the money's going to be there. How come we can get this money to move this manure all of a sudden, but we can't fund extension? And every one of these farmers used to know what the hell was going on when we had extension agents. But now we don't. But all of a sudden, magically, we can move the manure, we can come up with this money. Why can't we have that for extension? I know that's not, you can't answer that. Buddy probably.
Okay.
But that goes back to information, disseminating to the people, the farmers, the citizens, the taxpayers. And while I'm on big environment, everybody should use that word. I got it off a lady in Twitter, big environment. We got big chicken, we got big ag, we got big environment. Make sure you use that from now on. What are their thoughts on stockpiling manure on state-owned land owned by the public?
Again, I'm not prepared to.
Were they not at the stakeholders meeting?
They were.
And they did not have a comment on that.
They believed that there was value in the public understanding that this material is regulated and that there's a right time and right place. Did they say this is a good thing? I wouldn't represent it that way, Charles.
And Charles, as you know, there are many different environmental groups in the state, and they all have different views and perceptions. Some are much further to the right, and some are more middle. So some of the, I didn't go that far, Charles, I stopped in the middle. Some believe, I do have to say, some of the environmentalist groups do believe that stockpiling is a better venue than applying litter way in advance of a growing crop. But there are other groups, Charles, that will never believe that stockpiling is a good thing. But when we discussed the state taking this litter in temporary storage, nobody raised a big no way, no how. But there was some comments in the paper made by a group from down here about accusing me of not caring about homeless in Baltimore City, worrying more about taking care of chicken poop. So, you know.
Take care of them, we'll take care of chicken noise. My last comment is my belief, the farmers, growers, integrators, if this is enacted, will ultimately pay the cost. You're devaluating this commodity that you say it has a value now, but down here it will not have a value. It's promises. There's no plan. It's just a promise. Come along with us. Have faith in us. That's not going to get it done. These people, including me, it's money out of our pockets. When the tobacco was deemed evil to grow it by Maryland farmers, they got to cash in big buyout checks. I say what's good for the goose is good for the gander. In this case, it's going to be the roosters. If you're going to take our product, we need to be compensated.
My name's Carla with Ellis Farms. For those of you who don't know me, I am the company I work for is a major manure transporter in Maryland and Delaware. You know, many of the people that are sitting here in this meeting are here because we asked them to. How are you going to help them transport their manure when I can't do it? There's many farmers in this room that took manure from me when others wouldn't. Buddy, I sent you an email about a month ago asking you for information for farmers that you say want chicken manure. I've not gotten an answer back. I have manure currently stockpiled in sheds in Maryland and Delaware that I cannot move because Maryland farmers are too scared to take it. Right now, you say my manure is valuable. And yeah, it might be right now. However, when you pass this, there's going to be an excess of manure, and my manure is not going to be worth anything. You're going to have it stockpiled up, probably giving it away. What's my business to do? We're going to be stuck. You know, Michelle Chesnick is my grower, and I may have to drop her because I can't do anything with it. I can only move so much. I really just feel like the environmental impact has really not been, followed through, and we have a lot of numbers. You know, we hauled 150,000 tons of chicken manure for 2012, and we're hoping to exceed that in 2013. What are you going to do about, I'd say roughly half that might be Maryland manure. What are you going to do when I can't move that?
Well, as we stated, God, get away from this speaker. You did ask me, and we did link up some producers with some other litter suppliers. So those guys did get litter, and that was, the extent of the list I had at that time. But as Roy mentioned, we're relaunching the old litter linkage program much more publicly than we were before. Before it was just, small internal calls people would call. So we try to make those linkages up as best we can. The other issue that you raised with us at that time was there was no transport money. When we met with Ray, there was no transport money. We've met with the integrators. Based on the current law that's on the books today, integrators have stepped up and said we've opened those programs back up, which should help you.
There's still no Mount Air money out there whatsoever.
And we've met with Mount Air, and that's a decision that they're working on right now to decide if they're going to contribute more money or not. As you all know, there are 2 integrators that have never participated in the program. We believe we've made progress with them to get them back in the program. Ms. Chesney raised earlier the issue of the current law says there has to be a 50-50 match between integrators and the state. We're reevaluating and looking at changing that law this year to change that language so that we have the opportunity to vary the match. Because when the program was shut down, what I don't think Roy mentioned, or maybe he did, was we had plenty of money. But because of the law, we had to close the programs because we didn't have matches from the integrators. So based on our current meetings and reopening up, I think it's Purdue and Tyson's because they have contributed more money, we've been able to reopen that program. And as Jordan did say earlier, we've had discussions with those integrators that were either had stopped or had not participated, and we are have had positive responses from those meetings. So we believe those programs will be opened up. Michelle Chesnick is the reason that we put in the provision that the state would take the litter. She's the reason for that. I saw her somewhere and she said, if I can't clean my house out, I can't get a flock. If I can't get anybody to take it, what am I going to do? Well, that was our response. I'll take it. And we've got to work out who's paying for what. But at least Michelle Chesnick will always have, as long as we're there, somewhere to take her litter. She can't say, I can't clean my house out, I have nowhere to put it. We're going to take it. We understand that during this transition, there's going to be some transition issues that we are going to have to adopt. As Royden said, that's the reason to keep the group together. And as we get data, we'll have better information. She asked about how much litter we produce in Maryland. I think it's 350 or 400,000 tons is some of the numbers that we have done some calculations on. So we do have some idea what's out there, but until you run the PMT, one thing that we keep hearing everywhere we go is, if my FIV is 150, I'm done. That's not true. Until you run the tool, you don't know. And I heard Charles stand up, and every farm he spouted is under 150. From what I know, Charles is going to keep applying manure. This is not going to stop Charles from applying manure. Every farm he spouted is under 150, and he stood up and told all of you how he's done that and kept his land under 150 and reduced those FIV numbers. So, thank you, Charles.
That money you take from Mount Air or from any other integrator, that comes out of our checks. So you're taking our money out of our checks, pulling off administrative fees, and then giving it back to us.
So I didn't know that. The integrator deducts the transport money out of your check. But that's a cost of reduction to the company that's spread out over the entire production. So based on the amount of money that they contribute is, Purdue has put in $200,000 or $300,000 out of whatever $100 million of that is. So anyway, Carla, I think I tried to answer your questions as best I can. But we understand, when we met with Ray Ellis, Ray talked about he has long-term relationships. This is going to change his business model. It's going to take more to transport that litter. Understanding that, we will do our very best. You have that promise and commitment from us to make sure that those issues arise. We're going to do everything humanly possible to make sure that we meet those and correct those issues.
Hey, buddy.
gonna drop, but I'm gonna get rid of it and I'm gonna grow chickens. Or you better get ready for the attorney costs, because you're hampering my ability to provide for my family. If I can't grow chickens, I'm coming after you.
I missed.
Why aren't you helping the farmers around here are afraid to death to take the litter because they don't want to deal with you people? They would rather go out and buy litter, would buy fertilizer, which is probably contaminating the soil worse, than take our litter, because they are scared of you.
Why are they scared of me?
Because you are hounding these laws down their throats.
I
They
think
have regulations for everything. So why do they want to even deal with us when they can just go out and buy fertilizer and they don't have to deal with you?
Well, I think earlier we mentioned that what we're trying to do is make sure we work with those producers, that they understand that there is.
I have heard nothing from you. I can't even get a copy of my CAFO permit. I've been trying for a year and a half to get a copy of that. When it comes to the government, you have no help for any farmer. Give him a microphone.
So-
I don't even need this. I know what I hear you.
They can't hear you in the back. Your CAFO issue is certainly an MDE issue. It's not our issue. I understand.
It's y'all's issue. It's our issue, because you're going to come down now. You're going to try to pass a Clean Water Act law, which is going to force us to buy permits that we don't need. Everybody in here knows how to grow chickens. We know what to do with the litter. We don't go down to the river and dump it. So why don't you assist us instead of fighting us? Everything we go at, you fight us.
Well, I think that if you look back over the last several years, we spent a lot of money and paid for a lot of technical assistance to help you.
Where? I haven't seen none of it.
Well, we
All
spent.
I've heard is that I'm going to end up in front of water keepers. I'm going to have to buy a permit. This is one thing they were trying to shove down our throat. We were going to have to buy a permit. Well, that's all you all are up there after, is the money that you're going to get out of every farmer.
I don't think that you've heard us advocate with any environmental group to get a permit.
You haven't,
There's
haven't
been-
done nothing for us, nothing, but tell us about the phosphorus and the little circles in the middle and all this crap. We just want to know the solution to the problem. What we're going to do with this litter that's so valuable we can't get rid of it.
So, first of all, over the last 3 years, we've spent $60 million paying farmers to plant cover crops.
Well, just
$60 million in cover crop money
pay
we've spent.
percentage of that and I'll leave. You can have my farm. I'll leave.
We don't want you to leave.
I won't leave.
But-
I'm tired of dealing with Maryland.
Well, you asked if we provided any assistance, so I'm trying to explain that we have provided assistance as those issues have arisen. You haven't, Ellis has not, you've not used any transport money to help him move his litter?
I am worried now that they're not going to get treated fairly, and it's going to cause them to have to drop their growers, which means they're not going to be able to take our litter. So then what do we do with them? Make that kind of drops?
Well, I think we've said we're going to provide a location to take your litter.
Where is the location going to be, Bob?
Depends on where it needs to happen. We've got working with other agencies to identify locations so that you don't have to haul it all over the world. So we're going to find locations as close to you, maybe next door. You never know.
One of the biggest problems I think that everyone has is basically, if this litter has to be transported, we need to know where the litter is being transported to. It's very hard to calculate out your economic impact unless you know where it's going. If it's going 20 miles, you've got one economic impact. If it's going 120 miles or 160 miles across the bridge, then the economic impact is going to be totally devastating.
It won't be a consistent number, because once they use it, when you're a couple of years, you'll have to find another home for it.
I guess I have a question, because this is the thing that really bugged me from the get-go. This is a piece of paper, and basically at the top, and anybody who has a farm, it says the Nutrient Management Annual Implementation Report. This is the report that you file each year, and it's 7 pages. It got updated last year. Every farmer basically puts down the amount, I have chickens, total litter generated. It's right there. Okay? Now these things get sent to Maryland Department of Ag and Maryland Department of Environment. I don't know which one gets it, but somebody, it's very simple to figure out how many tons actually does exist. All you got to do is add up the reports. I keep hearing numbers that are 275, 325. 100,000, whatever. We have to know how much is out there, because it is the economy of what we're having to deal with. Because without that number, you don't know how much money to ask for in your budget. I mean, there is a number, right? Okay, what's the number? Because the number keeps changing.
That number can be added up, Virgil. So based on what farmers report, we know what's generated. I don't have that number on the top of my head, but what I'm saying is that number is what's generated. Okay, so that may be what comes out of the back end of the bird, but that may not necessarily be what comes out of the house, because ultimately what has to be managed from a land application point of view is what comes out of the house. Different companies have different cleanout schedules. Some are annually, some are 3 years, some are even longer than that. So there's variability in terms of the volume generated to be managed. So there's one number, again, there's a difference between what's generated versus the amount to be managed.
If you have a cluster, you know it holds X number of bushel. Sorry. If you have a cluster, you know X number of bushel. All you got to do is multiply it out, and not the number of loads that you had in your cluster. You can, and where's Shirley at? She was in the room near the, well, there you are. We can sit right down and figure out the number of bushels that you actually came from each flock. When we clean out the sheds, I can tell you right now, a 40 by 80 foot shed at 2 tons an acre will spread between 75 and 80 acres, okay, with a Chandler spreader going 5.4 miles an hour in the 10th slot. I can tell you in the 8th slot, it will spread 1.5 tons an acre, okay? So I guess what I'm saying is these numbers are there. In order for you guys to actually put in a budget the amount of money that's going to be needed to transport all this manure somewhere, whether Ray takes it or somebody else takes it, the number is not a moving number. It's a number, because you've got cubic feet, and you convert the cubic feet, am I correct, Charlie? You convert it over to the bushels, because she called the University of Maryland to get the number last year. And this is how we figured it all out. And it's all sitting right on the plans.
So there's a difference between the amount that's generated and how your management is going to change. You're doing X with it today. You're applying what you generate over so many acres. Under this new tool, that will likely change. And you won't know that difference until until you get that plan run with both tools. So in this interim period, we're going to quantify that difference. And then to the extent that there are additional resources required, that's what you're hearing commitments for tonight. Just because it's generated doesn't mean the management will change. I want to hear from folks we haven't heard from. Yes, sir.
Fine. First of all, Kevin Anderson, Maryland Grain Producers Association President, Somerset County farmer. First, I'd like to say I've been going to Annapolis for 25 years and giving Lynn Hoot some gray hair. With speeding tickets and everything else I've accumulated all the years, tonight it's worth it, and I'm very proud of my agriculture community that I live in tonight. Thank you. Royden, what's your definition of consensus?
It's generally an acceptable compromise. It's something that everybody can live with.
I let you get by with that on the radio the other day, but I would ask you, as president of the Maryland Grain Producers Association, who was in the MDA building the day of the first meeting and was not allowed in the room of the stakeholders, that you would not use that term, that you would not give the perception to these people that Farm Bureau, Maryland Grain Producers, or Delmarva Poultry Industry approved of this. And I think you're misleading the people with your statement. And I am president of the Maryland Grain Producers Association, and I will tell you that we do not like it. We did not promote it, and you met with us, you met with our executive director on a Tuesday and told her to report back to your office the following Tuesday with her proposal, which happened to be the Tuesday after Labor Day. That's unacceptable, Roy. Now, our secretary sits there, and he is the Secretary of Agriculture. He has not met in a room with the agriculture stakeholders without the environmental community by his side. We have not had a single meeting with him. And I don't like the misperception you're giving people. Now, you were asked at a meeting over 2 months ago. The last question in our meeting in Salisbury, Steve Cullen stood up and told you that he had proof and scientific data that he needed to add phosphorus to his soils for his corn yield. Your comment to him was, well, I want to thank you all for coming tonight. We've had a good evening. We'll take any more questions. Good night. You never came to Mr. Cullen and told him to forward his information to the University of Maryland. You've never asked any of these agronomists in here to do that. I am not a chicken farmer. I have never cashed a chicken check in my life. But I am here tonight, and I have the opportunity for my family because of these chicken growers. And I appreciate that, and I'm here to fight for them. But just being a grain farmer in my operation, if you take this poultry manure away from me, you're costing me $150,000 a year on 600 acres of ground. It's going to cost the taxpayers of the state of Maryland $40,000 to truck that manure that I'm trucking now. I've tried to give you all these figures. You won't have a discussion about it. And furthermore, we have potato growers in the state of Maryland. You're going to tell them they can't use phosphorus growing potatoes if they've got a 1.5? That's death to the industry. The organic growers in this state, we've spent a lot of time and money cultivating an organic industry in this state. And the backbone of that industry is organic manure. They can't get a nitrogen source that's economically feasible to supplement it with. And you're implementing these regulations, and you've never had these discussions with these people. Now, when I was at the University of Maryland to a meeting over the other phosphorus index, I told them they needed to get out of the lab and get out here where the rubber meets the road. And I was called a disservice to my organization. Well, maybe if I say the same thing tonight, I'll be called the same thing. But you all need to get out of Annapolis. As important as the poultry industry is of this state, I know more about growing poultry than anybody in your department. It's a disgrace. And if Wayne Cawley was here, he'd probably turn over in his grave. But on the other side, I understand that you work for the governor of the state of Maryland, and I respect that you have a job. But all I ask is that you don't take your backbone out every damn time you go in his office.
Who's next? Bill? Bill, and then I've got the gentleman that I missed earlier.
I'm Bill Satterfield. I'm the Executive Director, Delmarva Poultry Industry Incorporated. I was among the 4 people in agriculture in that consensus meeting, who all 4 are in the room tonight. We did not leave the meeting jumping for joy with what came out of it. But he started the meeting by saying, we're going to have these manure storage sites on state land. That was the first crumb that was thrown. We asked for a number of things. why not delay this to allow an orderly phase in, much as we did with the nutrient management law in 1998. So there's an orderly phase in, people can adjust their operations, and maybe it'll work. Denied. We asked for an economic impact study to find out what would be the ramifications. Denied. We asked for state cost share money to allow farmers who apply manure but do not apply commercial fertilizer, who would now have to use commercial fertilizer, some cost share to help them buy the equipment or make the transition. Denied. So we the attitude was, well, it isn't going to get any better with the next governor. You better accept it now. So we huddled, the agricultural groups. We didn't, as I say, jump up and down for joy. We didn't have any cards in that game. We had exactly zero leverage in that meeting, and I still think we do have zero leverage. So I have two questions for you. First one, this applies not just to chicken manure, but also to sewage sludge coming from sewage treatment plants. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, here's my concern, that as they realize they will have extra costs in handling the sewage sludge, because the farmland they have been using may no longer be able to accept sewage sludge, they're going to have to come up with something else to do with the sludge. Well, we're already seeing the municipalities and the counties lamenting the fact that the rain tax is going to cost them hundreds of millions of dollars. And there's efforts underway to eliminate the rain tax because, as someone said, the voters are now having to do something individually to clean the Chesapeake Bay. So the first question is, if the municipalities and the county start bellyaching that here's another fee that they're going to have to incur and pass on to their taxpayers, will the department kowtow to that political pressure and do more regulation of agriculture because we simply don't have the votes? That's the first question, and I'll ask the second one after that answer.
As I said earlier, the Department of the Environment is revising its regulations related to land application of sewage sludge. Statewide, approximately 50% of what's generated in Maryland goes out of state. Of what's generated in the state, something less than 25% gets applied to agricultural land. I believe that the contractors that apply municipal sludge on behalf of those municipalities enjoy some operating flexibility that farmers do not. They have the opportunity to seek out land based on willing farmers and appropriate land and crops in rotation. A farmer who's generating manure and has to manage the manure or the litter that he's generating as part of that operation doesn't enjoy that same flexibility. So I think the municipalities and the contract operators that provide that land application services for them are in a very different and much more flexible position.
Yeah, they can raise taxes at the municipal level to pay for this. Our guys can't ask for, well, they can ask for more money, but they're not going to get it. So there's a big difference there. Now, secondly, when the public comment period for the original regulation closed in February of this year, DPI and some other farm groups submitted comments, and we've heard a number of times, well, only 7 comments. Now it's 8. Only 7 comments were submitted. Well, we're going to ask our people to send in comments during the 30-day public comment period. You don't have to pay a bit of attention to what's been said tonight. How much attention do you have to pay to public comments submitted during the 30-day process? And more importantly, will you pay any attention to those comments?
I think our responsibility is the purpose for this public participation process, the public comment period, is to hear from the public. And we will hear from the public on both sides of the issue, as Buddy has described. So we will weigh those comments in light of everything that you've heard tonight and see whether it's appropriate to make any changes.
Well, if you were a betting man, how much would you bet that anything said during the 30-day public comment period, or written in the comments, since you won't hold a public hearing, how much do you think that'll impact your decision to do something?
I'm not going to prejudge that, Bill.
Okay. Well, folks, I don't know if you're wasting your time sending in comments, but let's flood them, because they only got 7, and obviously he wants more.
There's a gentleman right behind Rance, with his hand up.
I'm Joe Holloway, Wicomico County Council. You know, I heard you say a while ago that you were in the mode to better understand the impact. And from what I've heard, you really don't know what the impact's going to be tonight, or on this process. But I've got a council member sitting here next to me, and John Cannon sitting up there was on the council, and I seen Mr. Hall leave. They say all politics are local, and I know you guys are insulated by the governor, and we know he's your boss. But how far do you think any local politician would get if they went to pass a law and they said, we're going to pass this law, then we're going to try to understand the impact? I think you're going about things backwards. You really are. And I think you need to step back and take your time with this. I've been to a lot of hearings in the past 7 years that I've been on the council. I've been through down zoning, I've been through proposed tax increases. I've never seen a turnout like this, and I'm proud they're here.
Thank you, Mr. Holloway. Other comments, questions? I got one up front, all the way in the back, and I've got one over, and Senator Mathias. And Kurt. Okay, so I got four. Howard had one all the way in the back. He was. Okay. All right.
All right, folks, most of you know who I am. I'm Alan Hudson, and you said you were going to educate. As Charles, I like your thing, big environment. I really like that. How do you propose to educate them? We spent 3 years of our life trying to educate them, and I don't think they caught on to a bit of it. So how do you propose to do that, and how are you going to pile up manure? I don't understand. You must have. That's it. Well, it took us 3 years to show that it wasn't chicken manure. You're going to pile it up, and it will be chicken manure. What are you going to do about that? I mean, I don't know how to say this. You've got more guts than I do, I guess.
As we've said, I think there are some perspectives or opinions that we won't change. There are people that are going to be hard and fast that have very real concerns about poultry litter piled up. But I think that to the extent that we can demonstrate that there are regulations in place, that they're based on science about how to appropriately stockpile that material and apply it at the right time of the field, those are the facts that we're going to put out there. So I think we have a responsibility to put the facts out there and promote those sound use of this material going forward. I've got one in the front here, and then one all the way in the back, and then Senator Mathias, and then Kurt.
Bob Mitchell, Berlin. I work for Worcester County, and Commissioner Shockley has asked a lot of questions, and I've tried to come up with some answers to them, and I think a lot of this relates to implementation. And Secretary Hance, you got some really talented people working for your agency, including Mr. Powell. And implementation of this is going to be critical, and you've got some serious parts of the equation that have to be considered. Number one, too, is the whips. You mentioned the whips. We're on phase 2 now. We're going to phase 3. And the first one in the first and second phase, you have tasks in there, including aggregation of data, and that hasn't been done yet. I mean, that's the scope of the problem right now. The MDA was going to aggregate this data, the form that Virgil held up, Commissioner Shockley held up. I mean, Josh McGrath took a lot of samples, but what has been shown to the industry is about 3 slides on a PowerPoint presentation about what the impacts of these regulations are. That's really what they have right now, old versus new. And he took, a couple hundred samples. There's a couple hundred farms. That's not every farm field. That's not every farm. That doesn't mean that Worcester County has 80% of the farm fields. You can't apply a drop of nutrients anymore, or a drop of litter anymore. It doesn't mean that 75% of Somerset you can drop any litter anymore. This aggregation of data is critical to implementation of this. Not saying that the Hudson Farm has X amount of fields that they can't land apply. This is aggregate. This is a watershed-wide. This is a county-wide thing, and that needs to be done. You have that's critical to see how you're going to move forward. I mean, I really don't envy you. You have a daunting task to try to implement this. You have a huge regulation to implement, and you've got a huge task to try to do it. You've got to retool an entire industry now. You're going to have to prioritize who can apply and who can't land apply. Is that going to be part of the cost share? Because if you get cost share, you shouldn't be giving cost share to somebody that's going to land apply. You should be giving it to somebody that can't land apply or has high phosphorus fields or according to the tool. Now, there's other things in this too. I mean, the sludge cannot be ignored as well. We generate as much sludge in the state as we do manure. That's the environmental groups kind of forget that. And we send half of it to Virginia. And guess what the water keepers do? They sue. They're suing Virginia because the Shenandoah, where the majority of our litter and out-of-state litter goes as far as the sewage sludge, they want to land restrict. Again, we're in a watershed-wide effort. All the states, Maryland, Delaware cost share for transport. The other states do not. They're starting to turn their screws down. What happens when they restrict their land applications and start implementing their plan? Because Maryland's 10 steps ahead. They're going to start catching up eventually. Then the train comes back to Maryland. Comes back from sludge, and it comes back in manure. And we got to find homes for them. The fiscal note for the sewage sludge was $60 million to try to build larger storage container for it. What's the fiscal note for the manure sheds? Because manure sheds, you're going to get 6 months. Are we going to retest that? Because that's another thing about implementation. And again, Mr. Powell, I don't envy you because this is a huge daunting task. The other thing too is these guys can't compete with sewage generators. You got a service area. I mean, look at it. You talk about Miss Chesnick in a farm that you can't. She doesn't have any land apply. Look at Baltimore. Baltimore has a huge. And where are they sending theirs? I mean, they have not provided the land for their stuff. I mean, they're going to incinerate now. I think the western counties are going to start incineration. They're going to incinerate their trash. We're building another incinerator in western Maryland to do it. I mean, are you going to fight for the litter to get a part of that pie or part of that action? Same thing with the numbers. I hope part of this outreach is too to counteract some of the environmental groups using 5 tons an acre as litter pie. Nobody does that. I mean, they're using numbers that are factually wrong, and they're getting Western Shore legislatures to quote off them as the reason for your new, regulations. So I mean, they shouldn't be able to scare you with facts that just aren't there. And I hope that this aggregation of data happens sooner rather than later. I hope the administration can give you some money or something to actually do that, to take these numbers and do it. Maybe you know them, but maybe that's part of, and I really recommend as part of that outreach that you really got to share these first probably with whoever your stakeholders is. And these good people are all your stakeholders. I hope that you share them with all of them. But I mean, Josh is, like I said, you got 3 slide presentations on a slideshow about his numbers, and he's taken a lot of them. He's run a lot of indexes, but where is, you haven't disseminated that, and that's really got to be part of the problem. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Bob. All the way in the back, and then I'm coming back up front.
My name's Janie Smith. We're poultry farmers, and I have family that is also grain farmers. Seems like tonight you haven't been able to answer a lot of the questions. I'm not sure why you would hold a public meeting if you can't inform the public anymore than what they pretty much already know, which is a whole lot of nothing. They have no idea where this is going to take the income that they count on. They have no idea where the additional money is going to come from to fund these implements that Annapolis lawmakers or whatever are making, and have no idea how they're going to affect real everyday people. Not to mention this whole area. This whole area is based off of poultry and agriculture. The amount of money that it brings into this area foregoes anything that tourism or anything else is ever going to bring here. It is the staple and always has been of the peninsula. I'm wondering how you're going to help, especially small farms, not 800-900 acre farms, but small dry land farmers that will always have a higher phosphorus level because they are dry land farmers. And unless we continue to have years like this one, which we all know we're not going to, it was a freak event, their levels will measure higher on any scale, any phosphorus test that you send to any lab anywhere. And they're the farmers that can't afford to put irrigation on, or they'd have it right now. Not to mention the age of the average farmer now. You have a farmer that is 60-some years old that looks at the price of irrigation, and if there's no cost share for that, they're going to be like, oh, well, I have a 100-acre farm. I'd really like my kids to take it over, but it's going to cost me $60,000 to put irrigation on. I'm going to have to pay X amount of dollars for nitrogen this year because I can no longer utilize manure. Like, where is all of this money coming from that is going to make all of these things happen? Are the farmers going to pay for it? Because you're going to put them out of business. And then you're going to see the price of food go up. Is everyone going to make the public knowledgeable of grain prices that'll rise and poultry prices that'll rise? Because, you know, farmers don't have sources to utilize what they've always utilized before. And I was told that Maryland is a very bottom-down state. I definitely think it is. It's whatever says goes, and the farmers just kind of have to go with it, whether they like it or they don't. You either stay in the field or you get out of it. And from all the regulations that it sounds like are getting ready to take place, a lot of farmers are going to get out of it. Well, what are you going to bring to this area in place of it? More people that are going to put more phosphorus on the land. That's not going to keep the water keepers or whatever other environmental organization happy. It's not going to do anything except for wreck the economy of this total area and drive up food prices across the country because the majority of the poultry comes from this area. So can you answer any of those questions?
Jen, I think what we've tried to do tonight is present our proposal and in underscoring certain aspects of both the phased-in aspect of that revised proposal, where we're spreading this implementation out over a longer time frame, where you, the farm community, have a better understanding, and we, the state, have a better understanding of those impacts, followed on with a commitment to put the resources on the table to get this job done. That's what we've tried to express. And it doesn't start until you begin, if you will. So,
is there going to be someone in the next meeting that is going to say, this is what we need to make this happen? This is what we need in order to implement these things. We need the 66-year-old, 100-acre dry land farmer to be able to irrigate or to get cost share for nitrogen, or he's going to lose his land. And it might only be 100 acres, but there's 100 acres here, there's 100 acres here, there's 100 acres here. You're going to put the poultry farmers out of business because they can't do anything with their litter. Or it costs too much to send it somewhere. If nobody has these answers, like, you have a year to figure all of these answers out. And as farmers, we have a year to figure out what we're going to do.
Since we began the nutrient management program, we've relied on that technical advice and the expertise of the University of Maryland. So it's rooted in that locally based land-grant university that's providing nutrient recommendations on what it takes to grow a crop, beginning with a soil sample. That's the fundamental premise upon which our nutrient management program is based. So as you spring forward from that, we're relying on that science about environmental risk related to that crop production when soil P is very high. We've talked about our understanding and commitment to not only the agricultural industry as a whole, but the poultry industry specifically, because it drives a specific, very real element of not only what comes out of the poultry house and a processing plant, but the entire grain production and the basis premiums that farmers in Maryland enjoy by virtue of that poultry production and using that feed locally. So I want to reiterate the fact that that's not lost on us, and we've anticipated certain levels of need. We're putting those on the table, and we're laying out a process that allows us to improve that information going forward so that we make sure that those farmers have those resources and that we can continue to rely on that technical expertise of the University of Maryland about what it takes to grow a crop and keeping crop farmers profitable.
I understand the science behind it. I was just wondering, you need all of these written statements in by the 18th, correct? Is someone
18th of November.
Is someone going to make the general public aware before the 18th of November how if all of this stuff is not figured out and no one still has any answers when all of these are implemented, that it could drive their food prices up and kill the economy in the area that they live in? Is someone going to make them aware of that so they can send letters too?
That'll be up to those individual constituencies and how they represent the impacts and what they believe them to be. So that's the purpose of the public comment period, to bring that kind of information to light.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Mathias.
Thank you. I want to be brief, and I just want to say this to you. Thank you for being here tonight. This is not Senator Mathias tonight. This is your neighbor. I see you in McDonald's. I see you in the grocery store. And I see you in our communities. Mr. Lindbeck, I'm proud of you sitting there with your father, because that's what we talk about. We achieve great things in this state, educating, being the number one 5 years in a row, making higher education affordable. But when it's all in, it's all done, what we have to continue to be here in this community on the Eastern Shore in our country is a strong family. And you represent that tonight. I'm proud of Kevin Anderson tonight. When he said he's proud of this farming community, I'm proud of it too. When I asked you to support me and send me to Annapolis, I promised you I'd work for you 100%. I know how we're here tonight. When those emergency regulations were proposed, myself and a few other people got on the phone and said, this is wrong. And buddy, you pulled them. You got it done and you went to work. I'm asking you tonight to do the same. You're looking in the eyes of the people that are the Eastern Shore, our families. I'm asking you tomorrow, tonight on the way home, to call the governor tomorrow and tell him that this is moving too fast, to stand up to the EPA. I'm proud of you tonight because you've met 130% of your goal on a measurement. You're going to make your payment at the bank tomorrow. You're going to go somewhere and you're going to buy what you have to have in order to go forward. And if you have to get a bridge loan to do it, maybe character loans somewhere in this country are gone, but they're still here because of the industry that you're in. I'm asking you, please. When Bill Satterfield stood up and said, looked over you all and said, well, I don't know if we're wasting our time or not tonight. Let's show Bill you're not wasting your time. You believe in your government and what the Constitution says. This is important to us tonight, buddy. This is our families. We don't have a lot of industry here on the Eastern Shore. We're working to build it. We're shooting off rockets. We're doing all kind of things, but these people are in the trench every day. Tomorrow morning when that sun comes up, they're going to be already out on the street. They're going to be on the farms. They're going to be doing what they have to do. They're going to be driving buses. And when the governor stepped up, when he stepped up for Alan Hudson and his family, I'm asking you to have him step up for us tonight, please. Ladies and gentlemen, write the letters. Write the letters. Believe in yourself. Chairman Conway's here tonight. We've been here for the DPI dinners when all my colleagues have been acknowledged for what they've done for the poultry industry. It's time for us to step up and continue to do more. Both of our most recent ag secretaries are here tonight, Lou and Roger. And when I walked around and asked y'all to trust me, I used Roger to help me because he bridged that gap. I said his family's been in farming since the 1600s. That's what's important here tonight, buddy, Royden. It's the practicality and the common sense. With all due respect, it's missing. Please take this back. Please take this back and join me and join us in the fight as we go forward to protect and preserve the families of the Eastern Shore and this farming industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. Got Kurt up front, and then Roger.
Thank you. Kurt Folks with Farm Credit. A lot has been talked about the economic impact, so I'm not going to reiterate a lot of it. What we did as a result of trying to analyze how these regulations are going to impact our customer members is we took we figured how much money was in loans to folks that have livestock, folks that grow any kind of crop in the ground that require nutrients. And in Maryland, that accounts for over $750 billion in this state. And we're asking them to change their business plans in a year's time, less, in order to react to these regulations. We're asking them to make major purchases of implements that they never would have considered purchasing, because now they've got to have a different nutrient regime, different ways to fertilize their crops. So that's the impact that we see it having on the customer members, and many of those folks are in this crowd tonight. So we ask the department that as you get the data from comparing the P site and the PMT, to consider how those changes are going to impact the business plans, what kind of costs. Not only are we talking lost revenue potentially, but the actual outlay of money that's going to be required in order to react to these regulations. So that's our request, and as you compile the data, that you consider that.
Thank you, Kurt. Roger.
Roger Richardson, farmer. You know, Roy, and I think one thing we've missed out on, one of the most important people that we all have is the people to help us do our nutrient management plans. And I don't believe you had any of those on your study committee to correlate the information from the university. And it bothers me when the university didn't have enough interest to send somebody tonight, and then to back them 100% is a hard job for me to do. And I think in your studies on your science, you need some of this scientific information that the nutrient management people have. I think that would be more important than the university, really, because the university basically quit doing soil tests some years ago for the farmers, because our nutrient management specialist has to send them to another state to get them done. So at this time, I think more information on the science needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Got one all the way in the back. Howard? Yes.
Hello? Yeah, you can hear me. My name is Kanu. I'm a poultry grower. The first question I want to ask you is, what happens if you guys don't meet the EPA deadline? Do they slap you on the wrist? Say, bad boy, bad boy? I mean, what really happens?
EPA has authority through funding mechanisms that flow to the state of Maryland. They have authority related to Clean Water Act authority for things like stormwater management permits. In the ag sector, their authority is related or pretty much limited to the CAFO arena. So they have the authority, the ability to ratchet down additional requirements and approval process for things within their authority, basically tightening their regulatory control over the activities within Maryland that ultimately relate to a water quality benefit.
Okay, and you said by 2025 is when you have to meet those deadlines, right? And then they look at what you're doing now and they say, oh, you're behind schedule, you know, ramp it up. And so if you don't ramp it up at the speed that they want, they still don't do anything to you till 2025. Isn't that correct?
As we've described, the process is chunked out into 2-year intervals. They're called 2-year milestones. So we as the state are required to submit a plan every year and then report our progress toward meeting those 2-year goals. So to the extent that we fall short in a given milestone, there may be, in meeting a 2-year goal, they're tracking that over time. In 2017, EPA has said there's going to be an interim evaluation. So they're basically 2017 is a midpoint in that process by which they would evaluate where the state is toward meeting that 2025 goal and any adjustments in that watershed implementation plan that they had approved for Maryland, and basically have the potential to require course corrections depending on where we are on course.
On the way I see it, everybody here has been talking about the economic impact, and that's one of the reasons why I'm here. For the most part, I'm kind of a transplant in Maryland, and I've come from a place where it's very, very blue, and I do have very liberal views on the environment and such, but I do understand the economic impact of things, and I really don't like it when either side, whether you're on the right or the left, tries to shove your agenda down other people's throat without actually looking at the impact that it's making on these people's lives. And so what I'm trying to say and asking you about the EPA is, why don't you slow it down? Why don't you do what you've done in the past? I understand there's deadlines that need to be met, but there's nothing horrible that happens if we don't meet those deadlines. But you know what? When you speed this up, people's lives are impacted in a horrible way. Everybody here is going to lose thousands of dollars, and that's going to definitely devastate everybody here. If we don't listen to what the EPA says according to their deadline, nobody dies from it. People could possibly die from this. And that's why I'm just wondering why we have to listen to everything that the EPA says and why we just can't slow it down, really look at the impact that it's going to make on people's lives and do it the right way. And that's all I'm asking. And I think that's all anybody here is asking. We're not totally against the regulation. We understand about saving the environment. And I think most of us here have been pretty good about being stewards of the environment. Anytime you guys put in a new regulation, with all the other, growing grass or whatever to prevent dust from blowing, we do all those things. But you have to give us time. You have to give us the ability to do so. And when you just shove it down our throats and say, you know what, we'll figure out the economic impact as we go along, we don't have that kind of luxury. If you take $2,000-$3,000 out of my pocket, I'm not making a loan payment. I'm losing the farm. And so I don't want to lose my farm because somebody is telling me that I got to do something that doesn't make sense to me. And, regulations have their purposes, and I'm even going to give you the benefit of the doubt on your research. I'm just saying, come on, let's do it the right way. Slow it down.
Brian? Beg pardon? No? Pass? Okay. Who's next?
Hi, Royden. I'm Paul. You know me, Paul Chesnick. I have a question. Where will this manure be sent to? Where will it go?
Are you speaking generally in terms of transport or the state operated?
The state facility. Where is this facility?
We're working with MES, Maryland Environmental Service, to identify properties that are strategically located in the region that can serve as receiving areas for this material.
When will we know that? Because we will not know our economic impact until we know how far the manure has to be transported.
We are working with them, and we'll have that information. It's a process, Paul, so we're working for that so that can be part of the information.
Now, the second question is, when the state takes possession of the manure, is the state taking all the liability from the farmer?
From the receiving farmer? Or
yes.
From the sending farmer?
Yes.
I would say yes.
Okay, that's my question. Thank you.
Right up here.
Is it on? Royden, how are you going to obtain all your information? How are you going to obtain your implementation information on this PMT?
We drafted in the proposed regulation, TAC, a means by which MDA would collect information from people writing plans. So the technical professionals like yourself who are running the P-Site Index and the PMT are going to have that information to be available to us.
So I'm going to fill out a form?
That's what the regulation provides. Now, since we wrote the regulation, because we're concerned about generally workload impact on people writing plans. We don't want to slow down the process of writing plans. A different way to get that information is through the plans that extension plan writers write And as that information gets loaded into a university database, is to be able to extract or mine information out of that, that'll give us that data. So it's clear that, again, that information is proprietary. It remains confidential within that university system. But to Bob's point, we'd be able to aggregate information, extract information back out based on plans written by extension plan writers.
What kind of a percentage do you think that's going to be?
That's 50%. That's roughly 50% of the plan. Excuse me? Right. That's 50% of the plans total statewide on about 40% of the acres. In addition, in the poultry arena, the information in their CAFO annual reporting. Yep. Mr. Shockley, the 7-page form is in fact the CAFO reporting form, and there's information in that form that we believe is going to be informative in terms of assessing this impact as well.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, up front here.
Warren Purdue, we raise somewhat of livestock, and I think the bottom line of everybody here and getting our tempers up and so on, and the nutrient management does that for me, so I want to admit to that before we go farther. It's an economic thing. You know, let's not kill the farmers here on the shore. Case in point. They said that this weekend we're going to get rain, and we got it. I said to the boys, we need to reseed this pasture, and we're going to have to get on it and till it and spread it in lime and all that stuff. So we did. Call the nutrient management man. I said, we want to put something on this to kick this seed in the pants, if you know what I mean, so it gets growing before cold weather. And he pulled a report of the soil sample. He said, well, you can't spread it in a chicken manure. We had 2.5 chicken manure sheds full of chicken manure. Said you can't spread in it. That's sort of a red flag in front of a bull when you got all that stuff and you need that new seed needs a kick in the pants to get it going. So what did you do? What do you think we did? I know what you're thinking. We went on and spread the manure now. No, we didn't. We just put the sprayer on and spread liquid nitrogen on. But you understand the running up the cost. You understand what I'm saying about the economics of this thing? To me, if we were going to get that pasture going, which we had livestock to eat it, we had to do it in a way that was the right way to do it as far as farming practices, and it needed something on that sandy ground to get it moving. So we're talking about economics here, and I'll just say to you fellas, I'm glad I'm not in your shoes. A lot of things been said probably could have been said in a little kinder thing, and I understand all that, but, you know, the bottom line is, you know, we buy everything we buy is because what we get what we sell from off the ground, or livestock or whatever. So I think far too many times there's too many big boys, and pardon me for calling you big boys, I could say big dogs, that are just don't understand the economic thing of this thing. Hey, you know, we want to continue to farm. I said to our nutrient management man, I said, why do they got to do this? Why we got to put the ditches, 10-foot fences away from all the ditches, 10 foot and all that? So don't they realize what that's doing to agriculture? His word was, they don't care. Please care.
Thank you, Mr. Purdue. Rance?
Rance Purcell, grain farmer and poultry farmer, Somerset County. I'd ask you, Royden and Buddy, I've sit here tonight and listened to what you guys had to say, listened to a lot of good comments in this room. I want to thank all these farmers and citizens for coming out and speaking their mind. But I would urge and ask the department to take a step back and think about this. look, you're basically doing the same thing, running roughshod. We started 15 years ago, back in '98, with a water quality improvement program. Back then, it was the same thing. The cart was before the horse. You came in, you implemented regulations, said the farmers are going to do this, this, this. There was no regard for what effect it was going to have on the farmer. And we fought and fought over years and years, had a few changes made in the last 10 years, but we're still fighting that. This seems to be the same thing. You're sitting up here tonight saying, this is what we're going to do. This is what we want you to do. But you've taken no regard, either taken no regard or just don't have any care of what the economic impact is on the farmers of this state. I saw maybe a couple months ago, there was an article in the paper. I'm sure Senator Mathias, I think he commented on it in the paper about Maryland legislature having some issues about wanting to change the start date of the school systems in the state of Maryland. We've had issues this before, maybe put it off to a later date, go back to after Labor Day. Well, a whole big stink got raised. We got to have an economic impact study and see what it's going to cost. So that got put off for a whole year. Spend, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of dollars or whatever to do economic impact studies, just to change the start of a school year. Here we are talking about something that's going to affect the biggest industry in the state of Maryland, and nobody wants to take time to do an economic impact study. I can tell you from my standpoint, you've heard it from 3 or 4 people, and I'm in this room tonight, and I've got the same figures, what it's going to cost me per acre, how much money I'm going to give up a year by doing this. Everybody in this room is going to cost money. Even whether they're no-land poultry farmers, whether they're grain farmers, whether they're poultry and grain farmers combination. It's going to cost all of us money. And it's going to cost economic hardship on the community. It's going to cost the economy money, and it's going to trickle down effect. And I started in this state as a young farmer 20 years ago. I still consider myself a young farmer at 42 when you look at the historic age and the age demographic of farmers. And, you know, I'm proud to be a farmer in this state, but I can tell you it's getting harder and harder. And for the gentleman over here that wants to buy his poultry farm, if he's still sitting in the room, yes, sir, there he is, Mr. Lindbach. I wish you the best of luck. I hope that works out for you, but you're facing an uphill battle. The regulations in the state of Maryland are getting tougher and tougher every year. And my interpretation on this meeting tonight is you're working on 2-year intervals until the year 2025. So I'm sitting here looking, this is 2012. We got 12 more years of this shit. Every 2 years you're going to come back with more regulations so we can meet the goals. Buddy, you're shaking your head no. All right, give me a comment. Go ahead.
What we're proposing tonight, what we're talking about tonight, is part of a plan that EPA approved back in 2009, 2010 in this TMDL process. So it's one piece of a much broader spectrum of practices. So this in combination with the regulations that we passed last fall about setback requirements, cover crops in the fall, incorporation, those are all part of that plan, in addition to things that Buddy talked about earlier, like the cover crops and things we've been doing for a long time, like waste storage structures, grass waterways. So this is a part of that plan that has a trajectory, if you will, that incrementally we're implementing the things that we committed to EPA to do, this being one, along with the acres of cover crop, the waste storage structures, and so on. So we're carrying out a plan that was put in place several years ago, and it has an implementation schedule between now and 2025.
I fully understand that. My interpretation of it is, though, as you said, the last 2 years, the last 2 times that it's been evaluated and meeting our percentage of goals and who's doing what, the agricultural community has been 130% of their goals. We have beaten our goals the last 2 times we were evaluated. And so if we've beaten our goals the last 2 times, here we are, you're asking us to do some more. And we're doing more. So what's to stop you between now and 2025 from coming back in 2 or 4 year intervals and asking us to do this, do this, do this? And you don't know. You don't know what's going to come up in the next years, and we don't either. But I can say this, the Department of Agriculture needs to step up and have the backbone to support the farmers like they're supposed to, and quit making promises to the Department of Environment and putting words in our mouth that we don't intend to abide by. Because it's going to come to a halt. The farmers are going to start bucking back. They're going to stop voluntarily nutrient management. They're going to start doing what the hell they need to do to make a living and make a profit in this state.
Thank you, Rance. All in. I got one in the back on the wall.
I'm Bruce Holland. I'm a Virginia farmer, but I'm also a Maryland farmer. Farm with my nephew and son. We have been with soil consulting service for 25 years, I guess. Doing soil tests every year. Not something that's been required. We did it long before it was even recommended. We've had grass waterways. We've had setbacks. Some of the things we got paid for, and most of them we did not get paid for. We did it on a voluntary basis. The soil profile is a very complex organization, a very complex thing. And our soil consultant, because a lot of our land was planted in potatoes over the years, and we have very high phosphorus levels on some of our land. He said, I don't think you need any phosphorus. I said, well, I disagree with you. So one year we planted 2 rows with a 4-row planter, 2 rows with phosphorus and 2 rows with no phosphorus. And we got the extension service to come out and measure the yield. 5 places where we had the phosphorus, 5 places where we didn't have the phosphorus in the same field. There was a 50 hundredweight difference in the yield on a very high phosphorus soil. The same thing can happen with grains. So, you know, drawing this 150 level is not necessarily the right thing to do. I respect the University of Maryland. I'm a Virginia Tech graduate myself, so I naturally respect them more. But all the science at either one of the universities, you can't draw 150 level and say this is where we're going to change it, because it doesn't work. We've proved it doesn't work too many times. We appreciate you listening to us, but we certainly hope that some common sense will come into the play. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holland. All in? Okay.
We'd love to hear your voice.
Thank you. Now, my name is Janice Dale, and I just wanted to know if you have an email address or what address we're supposed to send letters to.
That's my email. It's royden.powell@maryland.gov. Excuse me, were you referring to the comments, the formal comments for the AELR? You can send them to me. The publication, when they're published in the Maryland Register, I think we put your name on it. Yeah, it's earl.hance@maryland.gov. So during the comment period, we'll take emails, we'll take faxes, written comments by mail, obviously. Thank you. That's a good question.
You got the fax number?
It's the fax number, 410-841-5914. We'll accept them. The comment was, the question was if you send us a comment before the formal comment period begins on the 18th, will we consider that? Yes, we will.
Well, everyone, we really do appreciate you coming out. Honestly, we do. And thank you for staying till, I think it's almost 9:30. But as was stated here earlier tonight, if you have comments, please get them in. If you don't trust us, you can go on the website for the Maryland Legislature, and they'll give you the AELR correct address where you can send them, mail them, whatever you want to do. But we certainly will make sure, even if we get them tomorrow, we'll make sure that we forward all those to the committee. And it is an open process and public, and your comments do count. They do count. And Kevin accused me of not having a backbone. He's accused me of being deaf. He's accused me of all kinds of things. But contrary to that, we do care. I'm a fourth generation farmer. I still farm every day. I was in a combine all weekend. But as any legislator will tell you, in Maryland, the demographics are against us. And you all need to speak up. It's very important that your voice is heard, because I can assure you there are others that are very vocal on the far left. So you want to make sure that your voice is heard. And we certainly are going to relay everything we've heard here tonight to the governor. He's certainly been connected, and so far, at least, whenever we've had issues or concerns, he's tried to address them to his best of his ability. But I just want to assure all of you that your voice, we certainly hear everything you say. And as we've pledged in any meeting, as these issues arise, we are going to address them as the best that we can to their ability. And, as Bill said, I can't guarantee what's going to happen in the next administration. And I'm committed, the governor's committed to, when we're working through this phase in, to do everything humanly possible that we can do to help you. But I cannot guarantee you what happens in any other future administration. And that's why I did implore them to at least, let's get this moving while we can help you. Because I can assure you, there are others out here that don't think we've gone far enough. My back does hurt, but I can assure you I'm being pulled in two different directions, and we are trying our very best. I know you don't believe that, but we are trying to help you, and we surely do not want to see any of you go out of business. So again, I want to thank you all for coming. We'll take your comments, or you can, if you get that information on the web, you can send it to ALR. Thank you very much for your patience.